title of my message today is called This is Strange. But it's called, like, in my mind, I go, this is strange. This is strange. You know, you've got to say it like that. This is strange. This message, I believe, is for us. For us, perhaps over the last few weeks, as we've been talking about clothing, naked Christian, the different garments that we wear. We've spoken in depth about that. Grave clothes from Pastor Cherie last week, which was an amazing message. I listened to it online just yesterday. And we've talked a lot about clothes and what we are wearing. We've identified that some are smelly. That was an amazing message. So over the last 3 weeks, please feel free to catch up if you don't know what I'm talking about. But some we have identified some of the clothes that are smelly and that are not doing any purpose on us. And so we've, like anger, bitterness, grief, etc. And we've taken them off. We've gone through that process, we've taken them off, and we've given them to God. And doesn't that feel amazing? You feel so much lighter, you've identified something, and you go, wow, God, thank you so much. Here it is. And you leave it there. But now perhaps a week on, 2 weeks, 3 weeks on, you find yourself sort of noticing that you're wearing your smelly socks again, that they've just slipped back on. And you're like, oh, what's going on here? I thought I got rid of that. Why is it back? What has happened? If this is you and you've identified that, what I'm saying now, then this message is for you. And it's for me as well. Because how many times do we hand something to God and then all of a sudden, without us realising, Monday to Friday happens and we get on with our week and all of a sudden we realise I've slipped back on my dirty, smelly, angry socks. I think this message is for us. A couple of weeks back, Chris and I had to go to the bank. It's not something that we sort of do much these days because it's all online banking or internet banking. But this particular thing that we had to do, this fancy transaction, required the both of us to go to the bank, and we needed a bank teller, not one but 2 bank tellers. And so I'm talking like I know all the banking stuff. I don't bank. I don't. My husband banks. I don't bank. The only banking I do is I tap my card and I know if it's over $100, I've got to pop my PIN in. That's my banking. That's how I bank. That's all I know. But, my husband, so I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about. I don't. I don't bank. But, my husband does. So, but this particular day, had to be on this day, we had to go to the bank, into the bank. So we arrived, got to the bank, and then now they have fancy, I think, concierge people with their iPads to say, where do you need to go? Yep, this is the queue that you need to line up in. And I was so surprised because I thought everyone did internet banking. The line was almost out the door. Like you walk in, the sliding doors open, there's the, I think, concierge lady, and then the line's just right behind her. And we're like, wow, it's a long line. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we line up to go see the lady, and then, we start talking to the other people, and it doesn't take long, 10 minutes, and we're like, oh, and I think we've gone this far. And Chris is like, yes, progress. And we're like, is this a long line? And people are starting to murmur. People are starting to complain because what is going on up there? Have I got enough parking? This is taking a long time. Some people turned and walked out. So then that sort of got like, I'm just like, Chris, are you sure I have to be here? Like, do you really sure that I need to be here? Yes, you need to be here. Okay, well, what about, and I start going through our options, and I go, well, what about we can either stay here and persevere, but maybe, because we went at lunchtime, and I thought maybe the line's long because it's lunchtime, so how about we go have lunch and come back? So he relented and go, all right, let's go get lunch. Got lunch, come back. Really, the line hadn't shifted that much. It's just like, really? Everyone needs to do a fancy transaction on this day, on this moment. Everyone, because, most people do internet banking. Why is everyone here on this day? But so we got there and we end up getting, the moral of the story is just stick to internet banking. Don't do any fancy transactions. That's it. That's the moral of my story. I will get back to that later. In the Old Testament, we have Moses. He was God's representation to the Israelites. He's the one that under God's direction, he led the people up out of Egypt. Moses was their leader. Moses was the one that sought God on their behalf. And every time you read the Old Testament, I am always so grateful that I live under the new covenant, under the New Testament, because we have access straight to God because of Jesus. And every time you read the Old, it is just so encouraging that you think, I'm so grateful that I live under the new. But in Exodus 24, we find Moses going up the mountain to get direction from God for the people. Now, Moses had already had direction from God. They'd already been given a lot of things to do. They'd, like rules and regulations, because there's hundreds and thousands of people. And who knows that when there's that many people, you need some guidelines, you need some rules to keep things in order. And so they'd already had so many rules and regulations, but God just was calling Moses up to add to what they'd already had. So off he goes. Now in Exodus 32, only 8 chapters later, we find this scenario. So let's take a look. I will be reading out of the Message Bible today, so it'll be slightly different. Exodus 32, verse 1. When the people realised that Moses was taking forever in coming down off the mountain, they rallied around Aaron and said, "Do something. Make gods for us who will lead us." That Moses, the man who got us up out of Egypt, who knows what's happened to him? So Aaron said, "Well, all right then, take off the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me." And they all did. They removed the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from their hands and cast it in a form of a calf, shaping it with an engraving tool. The people responded with enthusiasm. "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up from Egypt." Aaron, taking in the situation, built an altar before the calf. Aaron then announced, "Tomorrow is feast day to the God." Early the next morning, the people got up and offered whole burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. The people sat down to eat and drink and then began to party, and it turned into a wild party. God spoke to Moses. "Go," he said, "get down there. Your people, whom you have brought up from the land of Egypt, have fallen to pieces. In no time at all, they've turned away from the way I commanded them. In no time at all, they've turned away from the way I commanded them." How quickly the Israelites, who had good principles in place, how quickly they turned. How quickly they turned. How quickly did Chris and I leave the line? How quickly do we turn? How quickly they turned from what God had previously spoken to them about. It just took just over a month, 40 days to be exact. That's how long it took for them to hold on to righteousness and turn and leave. How many of us have identified some clothing that smells over the past few weeks with those last 3 messages? And I urge you to go online and listen to them again. But how many of us did identify something that was smelly? Maybe we were wearing the socks of anger. Maybe we were wearing the shirt of betrayal. Maybe we were wearing the shorts of disappointment. Or maybe we were wearing the singlet of anxiety. Whatever it is, we identified something and we gave it to God. We had a moment and we go, "Yes, God, I'm giving this to you." You and God had a conversation, and it was a real honest conversation, and you were led by conviction, because God doesn't condemn. He just revealed something to you that, you know what, yes, I do get really angry, or yes, I am suffering from anxiety, or yes, I have an issue here, and he brings about it with a conviction, never a condemnation. It's almost like a wow kind of a moment. You and God had a good chat, and you handed it over, and now all of a sudden it's back. Without you realising, you realise that you've slipped on your angry socks again, and you're like, "What has happened? This is strange. I've handed this over. This is strange. This is strange. I handed this over. What is going on here? A couple of things can happen. I'm glad you asked. What has happened? A couple of things that I think have been valuable to me. Number one is, it is a time or a season of testing. That very thing that you identified and took off and handed over to God is the very thing that you are going to be tested on. You can take that to the bank when you go there next. This is something that as soon as you hand something over to God and have a real conversation, most likely you are going to be tested on. And I mean test, not in a mass test. When I think test, I always think back to like mass tests and I just fail, Testing in a way that is filled with grace, testing in a way that is filled with a process for our benefit. Not testing like pass or fail. Testing as in a way of let's walk through this process. Take your angry socks, for example. God lovingly revealed to you the problem that you have got a bit of an anger issue. I'm picking on anger because we all get angry and, it's just an easy one to pick on. So let's take your angry socks, for example, and God lovingly in a situation just revealed to you in a loving way, you know what, you actually do have a problem with anger. And so you're like, okay, thank you, God. And you handed it over to God. And he did it in a loving, safe, grace-filled way, what we just said called conviction. And it's loving and it's a wow moment. Conviction is such a wow moment of, wow, okay, thank you, God, I didn't realise. Thank you for pointing that out. It's that type of a conviction. And you responded, you took them off, handed it over. Now you feel like 3 kilos lighter. You're like, yes, I feel like the best Christian in the world. And you think all is going swimmingly well. But now, just a few weeks later, you find that you have to go to the bank and, well, what do you know? The queue is halfway out the door and you've got to line up and you say to the lovely concierge person that I don't have time, I didn't park in this type of spot that requires me because look at the time, I'm going to get a fine, I don't have time for this. What is everyone doing here on a day like today anyway? I thought everyone did internet banking. What is going on? This is strange. And all of a sudden your angry socks are back on and this is strange and you're yelling at the person next to you. This is strange. What's going on? Took you by surprise because you had a chat with God and that was dealt with. Let me read out 1 Peter 4:12 and it says, dear friends, I love how it starts. It's just like you're up here, you need to drop it to here. Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening. This is not strange. It feels like it's strange. It feels like the wheels are falling off, but they're not. It's just a test. You just got to hold on and get through it. It is just a test. Let me read it out in the message. Friends, when life gets really difficult, don't jump to the conclusion that God isn't on the job. Instead, be glad that you are in the very thick of what Christ experienced. This is a spiritual refining process with glory just around the corner. This, what you're going through, is just a spiritual refining process. You've not backslidden, you're not failing, it's just a spiritual refining process. It's not strange at all. Quite often God takes us through the process where he will show you this is probably something that you need to deal with. You have angry socks on and I'd really like to take them from you. And so you go through the process of, okay, I'll take them off. And then in your mind you think, it's done, it's good. God doesn't quite often work like that. He works with processes. And it is a spiritual refining process that now he wants you to walk through. Hold on to God and hold on to the victory that you've got because you did receive victory. God spoke to you and you took it off. That's a victory. And in it, you've got to hold on tight and know this is my ground that I've just taken. Hold on tight. You have taken ground. Now hold on to it. And don't believe the lie that you're failing or that you are a failure. You will also be tempted to feel like you're really disappointed that you've done the wrong thing, that you're backslidden, that you're a failure, and the lies and the little whispers start coming that I thought I dealt with this and now it's back. I suck at doing this Christian living thing. I suck, and it's so easy to turn and go, I thought I was doing the right thing. Failure and disappointment can attach to you when all of a sudden you think, I've dealt with this, why is it coming back? It's a spiritual refining process. It's not strange. You haven't backslidden. You're not a failure, and you're not a disappointment. 2 Peter tells us that the spiritual refining process is to get spiritually stronger. And God wants us to be spiritually strong. And Rick pointed it out before, to get physically and spiritually strong, we need to go through some hard seasons. They walk parallel with each other. To get spiritually fit, to get spiritually strong, it is going through hard seasons. And no one really wants to talk about that. No one really wants to talk about, we just want to be in the mountaintop. But it is the valleys, it is the hard season. It's dealing with, I thought I dealt with this, now it's back again, and thinking that you're a failure, thinking that you've disappointed God, or that God's disappointed you because you thought you dealt with it. It's a spiritual refining process. It's to get you spiritually strong. 2 Peter tells us that we must keep adding to our lives godliness, perseverance, kindness, goodness, all those type of things. That's what we're meant to keep adding to our faith and adding to our lives. And we can only add to our lives all these virtues by going through hard times. It is the hard times that define us. It's the hard times that strengthen us. It is the hard times that we add to our faith. Trusting, we add to our faith when we go through the hard times. But the temptation to quit is very real in a spiritual refining process because it's hard. It's really hard. You thought you got rid of that, but now it's back, and it's not back just by it's back with a vengeance. You can be just so disappointed at yourself, and you can be so disappointed secretly with God. So it's really important to know, and as I was prepping this, I really believe that someone here or listening online is battling this very thing, and you're so disappointed in God, and you're so disappointed in yourself, and you're so tempted to turn and go. Can I just say to you, don't run, don't quit. Hold your ground. You're not a failure. You're not a disappointment. The same God that revealed this thing to you is the same God that is walking with you right now to see this thing through. God is on your side, and with every hard step of the way is right there with you. He has not left you. He's not just doing this to torture you. It is a spiritual refining process. It's not strange. And number 2 is when we can be spiritually refined, we tend to turn to Aaron. As the Israelites did, they turned to Aaron. They just thought, well, where's Moses gone now? So they turned to Aaron. And you'll be tempted to turn to Aaron. The Israelites turned to Aaron, but that meant they turned from God's best. And they partied. And when it says in the message that they partied really quite wildly. But when you look into that more, it was really quite detestable. Unnatural acts with each other. It was a full-on, detestable, horrific scene that Moses come down and found. It was absolutely detestable. Aaron did his best and come up with the plan, but it wasn't a good one, and it definitely wasn't God's plan. Can I also say, don't listen to the lies. Don't listen to there will be a temptation when you're going through a spiritual refining process. You will turn, you look to Aaron, and for us it's the world and what she offers. All its drugs, sex and rock and roll. And I can tell you I've lived on the other side of that, being a prodigal, because what I thought I had dealt with, I didn't. And for me, the easiest option was to turn and to walk away. And I need to tell you that don't walk away when you're going through a spiritual refining process. It is just a process. You haven't failed. Stay the course and don't turn to Aaron. Don't turn to the world. You'll be really tempted to turn to the world with all of its offerings, but stay the course. Dig deep. Hold on to God with best you can and have a more mature spiritual person that has lived this and they know a little bit more. In Romans 12 it says, so here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, your ordinary life, you're sleeping, you're eating, you're going to work and walking around life and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the very best thing that you can do for him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention onto God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. Hang on, fix your attention to God. And can I get the band up, please? Fix your attention onto God during a spiritual refining process. Keep your eyes fixed on God and know that it is hard. It is really hard. Some of the things that we go through is really hard, but fix your attention onto God. You haven't failed. You haven't disappointed. You're not a backslidden Christian just because you thought you dealt with something and it's back. You've got to hold on tight. Hold on tight to hold on tight to their promises. And can I also tell you that what is in you is to set up a generation to win. You carry something unique. You are going through this not just for you, but you will learn the answers and the keys, and the next generation needs what you are going through. So hold tight. Don't quit. Don't be tempted to turn to Aaron. Stay the course that God has given you. Get really good people around your life that can encourage you and help you and pray for you, and hold on tight to God and don't turn. Don't leave the bank queue. Don't turn around. It just delays it. As Cherie said last week, you just go round the mountain again. Stay your course. Stay your path. It's a spiritual refining process. You haven't failed.